Good morning, everyone. We are going to get started in the next minute or so, just letting people have a chance to join since it's 10 o'clock on the dot. So you'll have a few moments of silence and then we will get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for a presentation on the requirements, overview, and certification form of our mentorship program. My name is Elizabeth Matthews, and I am here today with Megan Kirkley. And we are excited to have this presentation for you all today. If you have coworkers who wanted to join this call but were unable due to scheduling, please know that the presentation will be recorded and we will post on the website in the coming days. So anyone who needs this information in the future will be able to get it off of the website. Also, if you are joining us today for your QO owner and manager training credit, we will be offering that credit at the end of the call. What we will be doing this time around, if you join the WSC calls, you know normally we do an assessment, but for this topic, we will be awarding credit after the fact. So we will be reaching out to you all individually and sending you the information for your records. So hold on to your GoToWebinar registration email or your GoToWebinar conclusion email and keep that for your record. And then also either myself or Megan will be emailing you all the information for your credit and for your records. So today we have also attached this presentation to the handout section of the webinar. So if you look on your control panel under the handout section, you should have a PDF file available to you to download. Go ahead and download that if you want to follow along and take notes. And we will also be putting this up on the website along with the recording, as I said earlier. If you have questions throughout the webinar, feel free to put them in the chat box. Today, I will be monitoring the chat box while Megan presents, and if time permits at the end of the presentation, we will go through some questions and try to answer those at that time. If for some reason we are unable to, or your question would require a more detailed explanation, we will reach out to you privately after the fact. So without further ado, Megan, I'm going to pass this over to you. Thank you for being our presenter today, and to everyone who joined, I hope you find this educational and helpful for your mentorship program.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday before Thanksgiving. So as Elizabeth said, thank you for joining. Time permitting, we'll do a question and answer session at the end. If there, for some reason, we don't have enough time, I will be sure to send everybody my contact information, and you're more than welcome to email questions. And you know, if we need to do an FAQ or something of that sort, we can also do that. So we will go ahead and get started. So today we're going to talk about the mentorship program. We'll go over the requirements, do kind of a brief overview of the program, and then we'll go through how the certification of that program is completed. So to get started. All right, so as you all, I'm sure, are very familiar with, July 1st of this year, we had Laws of Florida 2020-71, which was formerly known as Senate Bill 82. What this did was require that all support coordinators be associated with a qualified organization. So we were it got rid of all solo support coordinators. So now each of you are associated with a qualified organization. Within that rule, there were an array of different requirements. One of those requirements being that the agency require a mentorship program. So each qualified organization had to have a mentorship program. So if you look within the law, subsection 2B, number 12 states that qualified organizations must implement a mentoring program approved by the agency for support coordinators who have worked as support coordinators for less than 12 months. So additional information on that law can be found. The full law can be found here.
Can I interject real quick?
You sure may.
You need to change your slide.
Oh. What do you mean?
Unfreeze your screen so that when you change your slide, it presents.
Oh, I don't know what I did. Can you see it now?
I see your title slide.
Okay. I don't know why it's showing.
There you go. Whatever you just did, click it again. There you go. You got it.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you. I don't know what I did. My computer has been very weird this morning, so I apologize. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so this was the slide I just went through. So I'm sorry, I'll show you here. I did a link. So here's where you can find that full law. And I'm sure all of you probably have it saved, but in case you're wondering, there is that. And here's the requirement. So this is all pulled from section 393.0663. And as I stated, within that law, subsection 2B, number 12, is where where it references the mentoring program. So as a result of that law, Chapter 65G 14.0043 Florida Administrative Code was developed. So the title of this code is Qualified Organizations and Support Coordination. And this rule outlines all of the duties and responsibilities of the qualified organization as well as the agency with regard to the Laws of Florida 2020-71. So this rule specifically addresses the mentorship program, and it includes information related to when the mentorship program is required, what must be incorporated within the mentorship program, what tasks are required of the mentees, the qualifications of a mentor, which we will also address those qualifications further into the presentation, and also describes how a mentee will receive the credit. So it gives the information on how credit will be given once completing that mentorship program. So there's some little confusion, and it can be very confusing with who should be mentored. It's a big question. So the rule clearly states that any new or current support coordinator who has less than 12 months experience working as a support coordinator prior to July 1st must be mentored. And that, again, has to be an agency-approved mentoring program. So they will only receive credit for participating in a mentoring program that's approved by the agency. They do have the ability, so let's say you have a support coordinator who have provided support coordination services prior to July 1st, but they just missed that 12-month mark. You know, they were hired and unfortunately, they had only been providing services for 9 months. What the rule allows for is that those particular support coordinators can use some of their past experience to count towards some of the requirements within the mentorship program. So if they had, you know, some of the requirements include some face-to-face visits, things of that sort. If they're able to show or to prove those visits occurred, they may have to get, you know, perhaps with another agency, or if they were a solo, perhaps getting permission from the consumers to utilize that case note or whatever it may be as proof that certain tasks were completed. The rule does allow for that. So then, you know, they can, like I said, they can use a lot of that previous experience and apply that towards the mentorship program now. Now, let's say as a QO owner, you want all of your WSCs to undergo the mentorship program, whether new or I don't want to say old, but new or current WSCs. You know, WSCs who perhaps have been WSCs for a couple of years, but under, you know, you've created this qualified organization and you have certain ways that you want things done. As a QO owner, that is 100% up to you, and that is your right to do so. So it is at your discretion as to whether or not you want to allow them or have them all participate in a mentoring program, or perhaps you're just going to go by what's stated in the law, and only those WSCs you're going to ask complete your mentorship program. That, like I said, that would be completely up to you. There may be other instances where, let's say, you're not going to require it of all of your WSCs, but as stated in the law, the ones who have less than 12 months, those are who you're requiring it for. But then you come across a WSC who, you know, they're not providing up to par. They're not, there's some improvements that you feel could be made. As part of your right as a QO owner, you can then ask that WSC to participate in the mentoring program. So you can offer that mentoring program as part of, you know, training. If there's some issues, let's say there, you know, again, there's issues, and as part of a remediation plan for that support coordinator, you want them to participate in the mentoring program. Again, that is completely up to you. And as we discussed, onboarding, if it's just something that you want all of your all new support coordinators who are coming to your QO, even if they're seasoned or not, if you want them to undergo that mentoring program, that is your right, and you can request that.
Megan, we have a few questions coming in specifically about what to do if you have an experienced WSC who left for a few years and has now returned. What would they do in terms of the mentorship program?
So that's a good question. In that case, they would be required to undergo that mentorship program because they left. If they left for more than 12 months, so if that that lapse in employment of a WSC occurred for more than 12 months, they would not be able to use that previous experience. Again, kind of keep in the back of your mind, let's say if they left somewhere, if they're not able to prove to you, and when I say prove, that being case notes, primarily probably case notes are going to be the main source of proof that certain mentorship activities occurred, then they wouldn't be able to use those. So for a WSC who has, problem with maybe seasoned but left for an extended period of time and now has returned, that WSC would have to undergo the mentorship program. Was there any other questions, Elizabeth?
Not at this time, but I'm sure.
And if that didn't answer the question, please let me know. Hopefully that was clear. So, all right. So now QO mentorship requirements and tasks. So again, the rule states we have to have the mentorship program. So part of that, as we discussed, goes through the different requirements that must occur. So each mentor must, or excuse me, each mentee must shadow a mentor and observe. So they're participating. When we say shadow and observe, it's not just sitting back, playing on their phone, not paying attention. We really need this mentee, and as a mentor, they should be encouraging the mentee to participate within these requirements, within the activities. So the first one is that they have to have a minimum of 5 support plan meetings. And so again, that can involve the mentor or the mentee's clients. One thing I did not mention is that a mentor, or excuse me, a mentee can carry a caseload. So once the region, once we get the application for the WSC and the region has combed through it and verified that the WSC does indeed meet minimum requirements to become a WSC, at that point in time, the region will send the owner a sign-off form so that WSC can work with ACA to get their provider number. While they're doing so, if a mentee needs to, or excuse me, yes, if the mentee would like to pick up a few cases, they're able to do so. If not, that's fine too. It's just they've got to be involved with the clients of the QO. So whether it be that mentor's client, caseload, or if the mentee has a little caseload, that's fine too. So again, it's a minimum of 5 support plan meetings. They have to have at least 9 face-to-face visits. And those visits need to occur in a variety of settings. So we want to take this mentee to an ADT program. Perhaps we want to do, we have a client on our caseload who works, and that would be a nice setting to take the mentee to, into a family home, into a supported living, into a group home. So the different settings, we really want to introduce the mentee into all of the different settings that our consumers could possibly reside. The other requirement is attending agency meetings. So any meetings that occur within that mentee's mentorship period, that mentee should be attending those meetings. They also are required to have some discussions with clients and families about how to identify and prevent abuse, as well as reporting of abuse. We're all mandated reporters, so that's very important that they understand how reporting is to be done and when it's to be done. Using APD iConnect for case management. So if you all are like me, I am iConnect savvy at all. So it's very important to work with these mentees and kind of show them, navigate through the iConnect system so that they become familiar with how to properly use it. How to enter case notes, how to enter a SAN, how to upload documentation, how to communicate with the region, so on and so forth. So things of that matter. Supported living quarterly meetings. So they should be participating in at least one supported living quarterly meeting. If there's more, great, have them participate in more. So they have the option. So those are all, those that we just went through are all required. And so they must do these things with the mentor. So these next set of bullets are options of, they can either do it with the mentor or they can actually shadow another WSC within your QO. So let's say the mentor doesn't have, their caseload's doing great and they don't have anyone who needs a significant additional need at the time, or has a significant additional need at that time during the, the period. But there's another coordinator within your agency or within your QO, excuse me, who does. Allow that mentee to shadow that coordinator so that they can see how that SAM process works. What's needed to be, what needs to be included in a SAN, what kind of documentation it's required to back up a SAN, when is a SAN needed, again, how it's submitted through iConnect, things of that sort. The Medicaid eligibility redetermination. So I was a support coordinator years ago, and I know how confusing those redeterminations can be, but how important they are as well. So having your mentee kind of participate in something of that sort would be extremely beneficial. And again, that doesn't have to be with the mentor. That is something that can be done with another WSC within your QO. A comprehensive needs assessment. So if you have someone that's going through, they're changing the name, but it's QSI, what was formerly known, have that mentee sit through one of those, so they can see, how that's done, what it looks like, kind of the questions that may be asked. And then also updating cost plans and service authorizations in iConnect. So per the rule, that there needs to be at least 5 cost plan or service authorization updates that the mentee is able to observe. And that can be combined with that using the iConnect. So there's
Meg,
also.
do you want to pause for a second? Because I've had a couple questions come in just for clarification.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
Okay, so one that came up a few times is just clarifying what is considered an agency meeting, and how would QO know what agency meetings are considered the requirement to meet the requirement?
So good question. So anything that comes from your region or even the region in which your mentee and mentor are serving. So like those the monthly WSC meetings, those are probably going to be the primary meetings that this rule is referring to. But if there's any other, and I know that those aren't mandated per se, but the mentee should be participating in those monthly meetings when they're offered. As far as, like I said, that's probably going to be your primary meeting. If there are any other meetings within that period that the agency offers, now Elizabeth's trainings would not be something that would be mandated. That's not considered an agency meeting. That's just a voluntary training that's offered by the agency, but it's not something that's mandated or considered quote unquote a meeting. So like I said, the primary meetings are going to be those WSC monthly meetings. And then, if you get anything else from maybe your waiver work stream, letting you know that there's a meeting that's going to be occurring. And then those advisories, having the mentees go through those advisories, that will be very helpful as well. Although there's nothing in the rule that states that, that's just kind of a side note. But that's what we mean when I say meetings.
Okay, and could you clarify if multiple mentees could participate in any of like the shadowing or the observations? We had some questions come in about having 2 mentees participate on a support plan meeting. Can they, I guess,
Yes.
can they mentor multiple people at one time?
Yes, great question. And so we'll get a little bit more into that in the next few slides. But yes, that's a good question. A mentor is allowed to have up to 3 mentees. So that's something that you really want to think about as far as the mentor's caseload and workload. If they're carrying 3 mentees, that could be a lot of work. So a lot of times you want to, those mentors may want to carry a little less than a full caseload, just to help them out. But yes, they can carry up to 3 mentees, and all 3 of those mentees, as long as the client or consumer agrees to allow them to attend, they can attend the same meetings. There's nothing in rule that states they are not able to do so. So yes, that is allowable. But again, they do have a limit of only 3 mentees that they can carry at once.
Okay, great. A few more came in, but I think you're going to answer them as we progress. So I'll hold off on asking them and see where that takes us.
Okay, all right. Okay, so as we talked about, the mentors also have minimum requirements that they have to meet, and we'll kind of get further into that a little bit later. So I know with this change, a lot of QOs, a lot of you all may be operating in multiple regions. So if you're going over regions, your mentorship program must address how that how your mentorship program is going to work over those multiple regions. So are you going to do you have a mentor in each region that's going to help with mentees, or is your current mentor going to travel in order to, or mentee going to travel in order to meet these requirements that are set forth within the mentorship program? So just make sure that you have that, you keep that in the back of your mind, that if you're operating over multiple regions, I've got to make sure that there's a plan in place for mentees that are out of the region, out of my home region per se, and that I have a mentor that's able to assist with those. All right, so kind of continuing on with the mentorship qualification, or excuse me, requirements. So many of you also may do CDC Plus. So as you all know, CDC Plus is an alternative waiver program that's available to all waiver consumers. It does require some additional training on the WSC's behalf in order to be, classified as a CDC Plus consultant. So for those, excuse me, for the QOs who are planning on or are currently providing CDC Plus services, the rule does require that there is a CDC portion within your mentoring program. So the tasks that must be addressed within that CDC portion of your mentoring program are a review of draft, denied, or updated purchasing plans. So you have a CDC consumer, you just kind of go over, if you have one that's actually in need of updating their purchasing plan, great. Have that mentee sit and kind of watch and observe how a purchasing plan is to be updated, that submission process with the purchasing plan, so on and so forth. Also, submitting a SAN for a CDC Plus consumer. So if that, if you have, and these are not required per se, because we understand that a lot of you may not have many CDC consumers, and so maybe they're not going to need a SAN during the 90-day period of this mentorship. And so that's fine. It's not required that a SAN be done, obviously. But if there is one, it's have that mentee sit in and kind of watch how that process works and how it differs from your standard waiver consumer versus your CDC Plus consumer. And then also just reviewing, going over the CDC Plus handbook, and pointing out, differences and explaining, how CDC does differ from the waiver. So this would be, like I said, in addition to all of the previously mentioned required tasks. So, okay. And so that's kind of, I said that's for those who are either planning on becoming CDC consultants, or you're currently providing CDC services. If for some reason those don't occur during that mentorship, just a review and kind of explanation to that mentee as to how those things happen and how they should occur. So mentees who do not have an active Medicaid waiver service agreement upon joining a qualified organization, as we stated, must go through a mentor program over the course of no less than 90 days. So here's where that 90-day requirement comes in. So a mentor program has to last at least 90 days. If it takes you more than 90 days to complete the required task, no problem, that's fine. It just cannot be less than 90 days. If the required tasks take you less than 90 days to complete, well, the individual must remain under that mentorship and cannot be released to perform duties on their own until that 90 days is up. So prior to them actually completing this mentorship program, part of the requirement is that they complete level 1 training and the assessment, the competency-based assessment. So not only complete, but successfully complete. And successfully complete means they've gone through the training and they have passed that competency-based assessment with a score of 85% or better. So if they score less than that, then they would have to retake the training and the assessment. And I think, don't quote me on this, and I can get clarification if we need to, but I think they have actually they can retake it twice before, before being turned down completely. So, but hopefully it only takes them, one time, especially with all the mentoring that they're going through. So now we're going to get into the mentor qualifications. Again, this is all listed within the rule as to what qualifications a mentor must meet in order to be named as mentor. And when you submit your mentorship program to the agency will be looking to verify that the mentor you have or mentors that you have identified do meet all of these requirements. So they have to have at least 2 years experience working as a waiver support coordinator, and that's immediately prior to being hired. So kind of the situation that we discussed earlier in the presentation, where we had a seasoned support coordinator who had been working as a support coordinator for years, but had took a leave of absence or whatnot for months or maybe a year or so. That individual would not qualify for to be a mentor, because it has those 2 years experience have to be immediately prior. They have to have an active caseload. Again, as we discussed earlier, the caseload size you may want to kind of look at, because it's dependent on how many mentees they have, that workload could be extremely hard on that mentor. But they do have to at least carry a caseload, and the reason being is because obviously the mentee has to shadow them, and so they have to have something to shadow. No ethical violations within the past 3 years. So they have to have at least 3 years clean of violations. No unresolved QIO background screening alert. So that's just the quality improvement organization, which is your Clarent. So no alerts from Clarent that they have background screening issues. They must remain in compliance with the required training as specified in the iBudget handbook. So any training that is required of a support coordinator or a mentor, I don't know that there's any for a mentor at this point in time. That could be coming down the pike. I'm not sure though. But anything that is required of a support coordinator, they must stay in compliance with that training, with those training requirements. They too have to have passed level 1 competency-based assessment. However, the mentor has a requirement of passing with a 90% or better. So as we discussed in the previous slide, for WSC, it's the 85% or better, but in order to be named as a mentor, it has to be 90% or better. They may not have any delinquent corrective action plans, and that can be a corrective action plan that was implemented as a result of a clearance finding or some sort of agency action. They cannot have more than 3 mentees assigned to him or her at any given time. So what we did kind of discussed earlier. And they must ensure that if the mentor and mentees clients do not require any of the items listed in that subsection 4, but there are other support coordinators within that qualified organization who have clients who are with any of those other requirements, that the mentee shadow those WSCs, or like we discussed earlier, that reviews of those the optional doesn't have to be with the mentor, that those reviews occur. If for some reason that qualified organization doesn't have any SANs that are going to occur within that mentee mentorship period, that at the very least that information and the process is reviewed with the mentor, or excuse me, the mentee. I know we just went through 2 slides that had a lot of information, so I'll kind of stop right there. Do we have any questions, Elizabeth, or do I need to go back and on anything? I know that was a lot of information on those 2 slides. Okay. All right, so for the mentorship certification, let's see if my link's gonna work for me. So the certification can actually be found, this form can be found on our website. So if you go to, I'll take you through the long process. So if you go to the APD's homepage, you will go to providers, and you can go to qualified organizations. And this page right here, just so you know, this is the qualified organization. Hopefully you all are familiar with it. If not, it's a great resource. You know, it goes over we have some FAQs about qualified organizations. Here's some advisories that are posted. I think this actually connects with Elizabeth's advisories too. This goes over the requirement. Here is where you can actually, is a link to the full rule as well, 65G14, so you can kind of go through that rule. Any important announcements will be posted here. And then down here is a very helpful portion of the web page. This goes through, we have the application for a qualified organization, and then here you have your waiver support coordination application, so for any of your new support coordinators. And then here is where you'll find the certification of mentoring program completion form. So that's where you would go to find that form. You do not have to do this by any means. I thought it would probably be helpful, at least for me anyways, if I were a mentor, I would probably come here and print this form off and actually take it with me so I can make notes on that form for that particular mentee. And then at the end of the mentorship program, I can kind of clean it up and submit it. But at least that kind of because it walks you through, let's see if it'll pull it up. it walks you through, each task that has to be done. So, it gives you information. So, you have to have the start date, the end date. Here's where your 5 support plan meetings are going to be listed. So as if I were a mentor, I think I would print this off and I would take it with me. It would just be helpful. Again, that's just a helpful hint. It's not a requirement by any means. Whatever works best for your mentors is fine. And then also just real quick, I wanted to kind of point out here on the same website, there's some helpful documents, some toolkits and stuff like that that are extremely helpful. And here's a mentoring program template. So we tried to make it as easy as possible because there were so many requirements within this new law. So we tried to make templates for all of these required tasks. So just so you have that information. So I wanted to show you that. That's where you would go to find the form. So when you're completing the form, like we said, it walks you through, it tells you what has to be there, but you want to make sure that the form is completed in its entirety. You want to make sure you're listing everything. So the final step of the mentoring program will be the completion of this form. The form, like I said, must be completed in its entirety and include all information necessary for verification of the tasks. So as we talked about before, I think it would be helpful to print it off. If that doesn't work, that's fine. But in addition to completing the information, the form has to be initialed and signed. The mentor will initial by each task or each section. It's sectioned out by tasks. They'll initial by that, and that's their verification that yes, I did this, and yes, they participated, and everything would, we've met this requirement. There at the end of the form is a spot for the mentor and mentee both to sign. So both must sign the form. It has to have at the very top, there's a spot for the mentee and the mentor's names and the mentor's treating provider number. That information must be completed. Like I said, the beginning and end dates of the mentorship program. Client iConnect IDs. We have to, so it's very important that we're putting the correct IDs in there because part of the region's responsibility is going to be when they get this form, what they're going to do is they're going to take a look at it and they're going to say, okay, for this consumer, they said there was a support plan meeting done on this date. They're going to go into iConnect and they're going to pull that consumer and they're going to pull that consumer's notes to view and verify that the notes indicate, yes, mentee was in attendance, seemed to have participated. It was indeed a support plan meeting. Check that off as yes, it was completed and verified. So we don't want, please don't think that, I know it seems like a lot of work, but it's a lot of work on the regions too, because they are going in and they're going to verify that each task was actually done and that information is showing in the note. That's going to be their verification process. So you just want to make sure that the notes are clear. So here, I just wanted to give a little sample form.
Hey, Megan.
Yep.
Before you go through your sample, we have a couple questions that came in about having multiple mentors for one person, and also where do they submit the completed forms? So can you touch on that for a minute?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So let me go back. I'm going to go back and we're going to go back on this page. So once you're complete, I'll touch on where you submit it. So once you complete the form, you're going to submit it to this same application submission, this QO inbox. So the QO inbox is really, now that we're kind of through the majority of our QO applications and such, the regions are still utilizing these inboxes for anything QO related. So like your ethical and professional violations, things of that sort. If you had questions on that, you could always email this box. So these inboxes are for anything, you know, questions or information that you have that's related to your QO. So the certification completion form will go to whichever, it's going to go to your home region. And it's going to go to this QO box. And then I'm sorry, Elizabeth, and oh, the multiple mentors.
Yes, they're asking if a new mentee could be assigned to multiple mentors, or if they are like shadowing another WSC for one of those optional activities, how would they kind of track that on the form, and how do you make sure everyone's kind of getting the recognition of what they're doing?
Good question, great question. So yeah, what I would do, and unfortunately there's I don't think the form has much direction to this, and so that's a great point that you bring up though, and perhaps we can update the directions to address that. But what I would do is, yes, they should be assigned to one mentor. But if there are other mentors within your agency who, like we had discussed earlier, if that particular mentor they're assigned to doesn't have, you know, isn't able to meet a certain requirement, then yes, but another mentor is, most certainly have them shadow that mentor. Or like you said, if it's one of those optional where they can shadow just any other WSC, that's fine too. So on the form, for those instances, what I would do is on that form is make a little note by your, so I'm going to pull up the form. So, you know, maybe you'd have the iConnect note or ID here, your date of support plan. You can type in this form, or you can print it and handwrite it, whichever works, you know, best for you. But the date, and perhaps here just have a little note, completed with mentor Jane Doe. And then at least that way, you know, that way we know. And then the case note, again, the case note should make it clear as well. Because the case note is still going to be done by whatever WSC or mentor is assigned to that individual. So if the client that they're seeing here, let's say it was one of those optional, I know this one isn't, so just ignore the support plan, but let's say it was a SAN and the mentor did not have a consumer on their caseload who had, you know, was going through a SAN at that time, but there was another WSC within that QO who did. So the note of them submitting the SAN and all of that will still be done by that particular WSC. And so that WSC just needs to be sure that within that note, they also indicate, you know, sat with mentee Tim Williams, and he, you know, walked him through the mentor process, or the mentor process, excuse me, walked him through the SAN process, submitted the SAN for, you know, so-and-so, whatever. So the note should be very specific to that too, and kind of clarify that, but you're more than welcome to make little notes on this form as well. All right. Are we good to move on to the sample form?
Yes, I would definitely go through your sample and kind of show them what you've been talking about the whole time.
Yes. And then I think this is the last. This is the last slide, and so then we should have some time for questions. So
okay, great.
Questions. Okay, so let's take a look at the sample form. I wanted just to kind of give you guys, because I know it, like I said, it's a lot of information. So here's where you would put the mentee's name. Here's the mentor's name, and then the mentor's provider ID. You want to make sure all of this information is filled out. And then here is, you know, the mentoring start date and end date. This time period here should be no less than 90 days. That's one thing that we're going to look for. It can be over the 90 days, but it should not be any less than 90 days, because per rule, the mentee must be must be mentored for a period of at least 90 days. So they would, again, put the beginning and end date, and here's where you'll initial. The next one is the support plan. So here, again, you list your different iConnect IDs, and then you simply put the date. So what the region's going to do is the region's going to go in here and they're going to pull up this 41268, and they're going to look on 7/22 and see, okay, yes, there was a support plan meeting. Pull up that note. Yes, the note indicates that this mentee was there in attendance. We'll check that off as completed. If they come across one that, let's say there's not a note, or the note doesn't end, let's say the note indicates that it was just a face-to-face, it wasn't an actual support plan meeting, the region's going to contact you and say, hey, you know, for this date, this is what you indicated, but according to the notes, it was not a support plan meeting, so it cannot count towards that 5. And perhaps it was, oh, no, it was, but we, you know, didn't, we failed to update the note to show support plan meeting, you know, go in and fix it. Or, oh, no, you're right, it actually wasn't a support plan meeting. Perhaps we got the date wrong, you know, something like that. So you will be notified. Again, it's kind of the same thing with your face-to-face meetings. So I know this is hard to see. We'll see if I can get a little bit bigger. So your face-to-face meetings, same thing. You know, you have your iConnect ID, the date, they'll be verifying this. And then here you're just going to give a real short description as to, you know, what the meeting was about. And here's where, you know, the living setting. So what's important here is when we're asking for the living setting here, we want to know where the meeting occurred as well. So that, you know, not only the client's living setting, but we want to know, okay, well, you know, we met in their home, and they're in supported living. So, you know, so in your notes, you can kind of at least help clarify, okay, well, the meeting, they're in supported living, but perhaps the meeting occurred at the day program, you know, kind of make that clarification here. But again, that living setting needs to identify where they actually, you know, what their living setting is. That's not necessarily where the meeting occurred. But you want to make sure that those meetings are also occurring in the different living settings too, not just, well, this person lives in supported living and this one lives in the family home, but I did all of my face-to-faces at the ADT. No, we want that mentee to get out, and we want them going into a family home. We want them going into a supported living home, and, you know, so that they can get information on, you know, how those visits should, you know, what those visits should look like, questions that they need to be asking at particular, you know, home visits and things of that sort. And then here, so someone had asked about the different types of meetings. Like I said, it's really the primary meetings are going to be those monthly WSC meetings. And so you'll just list the date, and, you know, the meeting topic or whatnot. So here's where you're discussing, you know, your ANE, your abuse, neglect, and exploitation, how to prevent, identify, and report. So here, these dates may match up with some of your support plan meeting dates, or they may match up with, you know, some of your face-to-face dates. It's, you know, so those dates, it's not that it has to be separate from any of your other meetings. You just have to make sure that, you know, within whatever other meeting it was, that these were identified. And so this, you know, it should be clear in your notes that you discussed this information. Same here, you know, again, it doesn't have to be a separate and alone meeting. It can be a part of your, you know, a meeting that perhaps you identified above. You just want to make sure that the notes are very clear as to what was discussed and that this information was addressed. So here is, you know, with the case management, again, doing their number, and then just what did you do? So here, we updated a case note or a cost plan. Here's some case notes. Oh, we submitted a new support plan here. So just making that clear. Here's your quarterly, your supported living quarterlies. Again, these could be part of your face-to-face meetings. It doesn't have to be a separate meeting, but the note needs to identify that it was indeed a quarterly. So here, submission of a significant additional need. I just wrote a number, the consumer's number out here. You don't necessarily have to do that, but if you're thorough, if you're like me, I'm a little anal retentive when it comes to things like that, and so I want make it clear that this is what happened, and I can verify that, and this is the individual who we had to submit the SAN for or whatnot. If it didn't occur, that's going to be not applicable. But again, here's where you're going to be verifying that although this didn't occur, we did sit down and we did discuss how it's done with the mentee, walk them through the process. Same with that Medicaid eligibility. And the completion of the comprehensive needs assessment, and then also the cost plan updates. So let's say, so here I kind of made an example. Well, there were 5 that, you wanted to do 5, but we didn't have 5 to do, but I did have 2. So although it wasn't met, I did want to identify, well, there's 2 that were done. And we went through the process kind of thing. Any kind of note that you think would be beneficial on this form, feel free to, to make that note. It may help, anything that you think is going to help the region as they're going through the form and verifying. Feel free to write on it. There's nothing, you're not allowed to write on the form and make notes, to regional staff. Or if you want to put that note within your email when you're submitting the form, that's fine too. The more clarification the regions have, the easier and quicker they'll be able to get through that certification and mark it as complete on their end. So this one here is where if you do have, like we discussed, the CDC program portion, if if that's something that you do as part of your mentorship program, here's where you would enter in that information, and you would just do your that you've reviewed the purchasing plans or updated one or whatnot, and same thing, the iConnect ID and the date. Here I just put NA because for this particular QO, it wasn't, they're not providing CDC Plus services. And then at the very end is where the mentor signs and the mentee signs, and both date. And then at the completion of that is when you would go to your email box and email that form. And so that's really about it. I mean, it's a very broad overview. It's, I'm sure we could probably go on, and you guys may have millions of questions, but that's about it in a nutshell as to how the mentoring program works. So are there any questions?
So Megan, while you were going through the demo, we had just some form functionality questions, like can they submit attachments with their form, or can they have like multiple people, like you were saying earlier, like listed on different activities, kind of just looking for clarification on like the function of filling it out.
Okay, absolutely, yes. Like I said, yes, you can send attachments with it. If things were being, if they did have to go to other, different mentors or other WSCs within, to complete some of those tasks, and those WSCs or the other mentors want to make a little note on the form, that's fine. If there's a section where they did everything under one mentor and that mentor wants to sign off on that, that's fine too. In those instances, I would probably, as the mentor, I would make a little note at the top, maybe list the 2 mentors that person was working with, or either in your email or as an attachment, kind of explain, that they were working with the 2 mentors, just to ensure that all tasks were completed. So that's why you'll see maybe a different set of initials for the support plans, or whatnot. So yes, any attachments, any like I said, any little notes that you want to make to make it clear for the regions, I think it's completely fine, and I think it would actually be beneficial, and maybe even speed along that review process.
Okay, great. So there's a lot of questions that we really haven't been able to get to. Some of them are probably going to need some one-on-one conversation with you, Megan.
Okay.
But I think what we need to do now, because it is 11 o'clock, is we will pull all of the questions that came in today and keep sending the questions as we finish up. And we'll go through them and make some kind of FAQ handout of some sort, and get that to you, because what I did notice is there's a lot of repeating questions as well. So there are definitely points where we need to clarify and get some information out to everyone as a whole.
Okay.
So I will get those to you, and we'll work on something and get that out on the website.
Yes, certainly. In the FAQ, I think sounds great, because I know that there probably are a lot of questions, and it's all, this is all new to everyone, the agency included. So we're all learning this process together. So yes, I welcome questions and appreciate questions for sure.
Great. And just a reminder, we recorded this presentation and it will be up on the website. Give me a few days. I will do my best to get it up there before the Thanksgiving holiday. And I had some requests come in for closed captioning, so we will get that set up on the recording. Megan, were there any final thoughts or comments you wanted to share before we sign off?
No, not that I can think of. If you're gonna get the list of questions together, that's great. If anybody has questions that they're not able to get into the chat, or that come up, I know as things start to kind of sink in, you may say, oh, I should have asked this. If there are any instances like that, please feel free to email me, or you can email Elizabeth and she can forward it to me. Whatever works best for you is fine. Like I said, I welcome questions. So.
And for those of you who joined for training credit today, I mentioned this at the beginning, but maybe some of you missed it. Save your GoToWebinar emails, and we will reach out to you all individually for confirmation of credit. And it'll either be me or Megan. So just be on the lookout for emails from us about that. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for joining us. And we appreciate that you took time out of your busy day today. I know it's Friday and we have a holiday coming up, so I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
And I just wanted to mention one thing, Elizabeth, before we close out. I didn't know, some of you may have missed my name. So in case, if you did want to email me here, it's my name, megan.kirkley@apdcares.com or .org, I'm sorry.
Great, thank you so much. All right, I will leave the chat open just a couple more minutes for any final questions. But I hope you all have a great Friday. Thank you so much.